Within these walls lived the first major woman artist in British art history. And yet, within a century of her death, her name was almost forgotten. So who was she? Here at Allbrook Farmhouse in Hampshire lived Mary Beale. In the late 1600s, scores of eminent subjects were captured by her brush, particularly the academic middle class of London. She liked doing divines, religious people, merchants, people who had made their reputation through cerebral activities rather than necessarily the great lofty aristocrats. Mary Craddock was born in Bury St Edmunds. In 1652, Mary married Charles Beale and they moved to London. In 1664, Charles lost his job at the Patents Office, so they came here in 1665, missing, fortuitously, the terrible plague which took away a quarter of the population of London. And then the following year, the Great Fire. They were much safer down here. She almost certainly painted in this very room or the room next door. What's nice about this place is a lot of the old woodwork remains, a lot of the original features. I mean, you've got fireplaces like this, great sort of gaping spaces. On the ceiling, you've got beams in every room downstairs. And something I'm particularly attracted to is the quality of the doors. They're surely 17th century, possibly the same doors that Mary Beale pushed open. These cupboards here look undeniably 17th century. It's tempting to think that she kept paints or something similar in here. It's so nice to see a house with these original features still remaining. In 1670, after she left Allbrook Farmhouse, Mary came here to Pall Mall, hugely fashionable at the period, going through a lot of development. Behind me, the palace. There would have been courtiers and courtesans walking around the place. Focus of politics as well, lots of gossip and activity. Merchants up and down the street. There'd been a smell of coffee. An ideal place for a portrait painter to be located. And where, I hear you ask, did Mary Beale operate from? Follow me. So all the evidence would suggest that the very place she worked is none other than the gallery I've been in for the last 12 years. Recent research done into merchant activity in Pall Mall at the period has shown that almost certainly, almost without doubt, it was on this very spot that Mary Beale had her studio, or more exactly, above me. And here she remained a hugely successful portrait painter until her death in 1699, and then she was buried around the corner in St James's, Piccadilly.
When she was living out in Hampshire, away from London, she wrote this really interesting discourse on friendship. What is so unbelievably progressive is she writes about equality between a husband and a wife. She really lives out her manifesto in her everyday life. She is at the forefront of the family. She's the figurehead of the business, with Charles behind the scenes helping her and supporting her and the children surrounding them. We need to remember just how progressive that was for the time. And I think there's something, particularly for women, that's really relatable about that story. A big drawback for women artists, particularly this is the case with Mary Beale, is that her work was attributed to men. Because men earned more at auction, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, even 20 years ago. And once you're missing a big piece of an artist's oeuvre, it's really hard to put a full picture of their output. And slowly, as these works are being reattributed, it's a real win, not only for Mary Beale, but for women artists in general, because it offers a great blueprint as to how we can reconstruct these artists and their work. A really good example of that is actually the painting just behind me. Something I really love about this painting, and Mary Beale's paintings of children in general actually, is that this is really an area where I think she excels. Male painters of the period were generally painting children as kind of shrunken down adults that didn't quite work anatomically. The hands especially, I think, are are beautifully painted. Her and Charles actually took plaster casts of their hands so that she could draw and paint hands in different kind of formats, which I think you get a real sense of in this painting. The little rosy cheeks on the face and the plump lips are very characteristically Mary Beale. And I think the way that she's composed the whole image is just so true to that child. We've actually got a very early head study by Mary Beale of one of her own children. This is part of a series of works of her children that she did. Presumably this is her teaching herself how to paint, and the level of skill already is absolutely brilliant. I mean, the way that she's observed that face, it's a really inventive pose, and it's just beautifully painted. So we bought this self-portrait relatively recently, and our conservator is helping us with the restoration to make sure that the artwork is as close to that the artist originally intended. It's beautiful, and it's nice to see her giving herself those rosy lips.
What makes Mary Beale so spectacular was the scale of the activity, the almost industrial level of production. She produced hundreds of portraits of many different aspects of the society and friendship group that she was in. Not only was she the first really truly successful woman painter in Britain, but she's also probably the best documented artist in the 17th century in Britain. There are many accounts that survive, kept by her husband, and as a result we know that the great hive of activity that took place here in Pall Mall on this very spot. What is particularly touching is the way that Charles refers to his wife. This is on the 25th of August, 1677. "My dearest heart bestowed this whole day in finishing a portrait." And the accounts refer to the cost of pictures, also fees to the children for painting. The highly elaborate described ovals that you see around the paintings, the children would do those, and sometimes the drapery as well, the less important areas of the picture for which they received a fee. And the fees are here. All the evidence is that she was extremely successful. And you can see why by looking at her paintings, because there is a particular type of Mary Beale characterization. It is empathetic, it's gentle, but there's also a feeling of the individual. You can just see professionals and academics being comfortable sitting to her, knowing that they were going to get a good result. On the Blue Plaque Committee, we have a rather quaint rule, and that is, should the person we're honouring be alive, they must be able to recognise the house. In the case of Allbrook Farmhouse, there is abundant evidence, and that, therefore, allows us to honour someone so deserving, Mary Beale.